Hello and welcome to the channel again. This is Sam, still trying to spin to win on Zwift. Another day, another club ladder race, and well, we're up against it in this one. We're facing some serious hitters, and while we'll take a closer look at the Fuder Revolution team in a second, one guy on that team has, at least on paper, a 5.5 watts per kilo FTP.
Damn!
Damned indeed. And he's not the only strong rider on the team. Far from it.
Fuck, you can't be serious, man. You cannot be serious!
I'm afraid I am. But we're still gonna give it a good go. Okay, I get it. It's gonna be real tough, but we're still gonna have to give it a go. And the course where today's little tussle is gonna take place is the Zen and Sequoias in Watopia. At around 22.5 kilometers long, including the lead-in, and around 175 meters of climbing, the course is pretty straightforward. It's flat at the start, there's a bit of a bump as we leave the desert, and then we climb the Titans Grove KOM before descending back into the desert for the finish. As such, again, the course is pretty straightforward, and the climb itself is very draftable. The average gradient is around 2.2% over the 2.5 to 2.6 kilometer climb. So normally it shouldn't be too bad, but today I have a feeling it's going to be full gas, because if the Fuder Revolution team has not dropped us by then, which is probable, they're certainly going to give it a good go on the climb. And our best chance today, I think, is just to try to hang on for the sprint and see what we can do. So with that, let's have a look at today's opposition. In the blue corner, the Vikings who bring the pain. Team Swedish Zwifters Ragnarök. In the red corner, some crazy French wine and cheese lovers. Fuder Revolution. So, where do we start with this mess? Oh yes, Fuder Revolution is stronger than us in every category I can think of. They have 2 Cat A riders and 1 Cat A Plus rider, whereas we only have 1 Cat A rider, yours truly, and I'm not really a Cat A rider. I just managed one good 5-minute effort and got upgraded because of that, but all my other figures are nowhere near Cat A levels. They have a higher average ZRS score, they have a much higher average velo score, and they are much lighter than us to boot, although they still produce similar power numbers. Very scary. So far, this is not a pretty picture, and it gets worse. As just mentioned, on pure watts, the teams are relatively evenly matched, but when we look at watts per kilo, well, there's not a single category or time frame where we're even close here. For example, their average FTP is 4.5 watts per kilo. Let me repeat that again. 4.5 watts per kilo, whereas we have 3.8 watts per kilo. And they also have better sprint figures as well. So we are truly well up against it here.
That's the understatement of the year.
And just to pick out one rider, Mr. David Cotin. He weighs in at 59 kilos, but he has an FTP, or at least a ZFTP, of 324 watts. That means a 5.5 watts per kilo FTP. That is absolutely bonkers.
You just blew my mind.
And he's listed as 50 plus to boot. All right, so any way I look at this, I think we may be in for a bit of a spanking here. But let's see how bad it gets. It's time to embrace the pain.
Let's race.
As we watch the start of the race here, a few comments on our tactics for today. First, we all agreed that if their Cat A+ rider, Mr. Cotin, went off the front solo, we wouldn't bother chasing him down. While we may have been able to stay on his wheel on the flat section, and that's a maybe, as soon as we got to the hills, we would get dropped. So again, if he went solo, we would just ignore him and race the rest of the Fudra team. The problem was, of course, that the rest of the team was also very, very strong. So we decided we wanted to race defensively and cover their attacks, and then hopefully survive the climb. And then in the sprint, well, anything can happen really. So we actually had agreed an order in which we would cover their attacks, and then we would reevaluate after the climb. Hopefully we still had all or most of our team members there and could have a good go in the sprint. Pretty decent tactics, I think, and probably the best we can do against a team like this. But again, given the opposition, if I'm honest, we weren't really sure what to expect here. But to nobody's surprise, their Cat A+ rider goes to the front after a couple minutes. At first he pushes high, but not crazy high watts, but then he says enough is enough and he sprints away. As agreed, we didn't cover, but I was ready to push here if another Fudra rider decided to go as well. But that didn't happen, and so Mr. Cotin was gone, never to be seen again. I also wanted to point out one other thing that puzzled me during the race. Mr. Larocque on the opposition team had a black tick on his profile, and I wasn't sure what that meant. Afterwards though, I figured out that this meant he is an elite racer and verified by Zwift. Keep that in mind for a little later in the race recap. A short skip forward here, as the rest of the flat section was a real Zone 2 snooze fest. I was a bit surprised at their tactic here, as I thought with them having stronger riders, they would push hard and wear us out before the climb, but it was almost the opposite. So we're all pretty fresh hitting the first incline as we head out of the desert towards the Titans area. And sure enough, as soon as we start going up, the Fudra team puts in a full gas attack, and we're all pretty much sprinting here for the next 30 seconds. Although, looking back at the footage, I can see that Mr. Larocque was not going quite as hard on this section, and he loses a few seconds. But as we get to the top of this little incline and start to try to recover, we don't really have to wait long before the group is back together, and then Mr. Larocque goes on the attack. I cover this one, and it's another sprint effort for me here, and I certainly burned a few more matches. Once we finally get back on his wheel, he knocks off the effort, but again, that certainly hurt my legs. Good tactics here by the other team, I think. We all got a bit of rest on the descent towards the Titans Grove climb, as well as during the first part of the KOM itself. The pace was still high, but not anything like those sprint efforts coming out of the desert. I am preparing myself for another push here, as if the Fudra team want to drop us, this is the best spot for it. And with just under 1.7 kilometers to go to the top, Mr. Larocque goes to the front and starts pushing really hard, over 7 watts per kilo. I follow, and at first I'm able to hold his wheel. However, he just keeps going at 7 watts per kilo. And even though I'm enjoying a lot of draft here, this pace is just not sustainable for me. This is where we should remember that black tick against his name we talked about earlier. Clearly, he's a very, very strong rider. But at the time, I just couldn't believe he just kept going at 7 watts per kilo. I last about a kilometer or almost a minute and a half before he just rides me off his wheel. I think I could have kept going a little longer, but not long enough to get to the top of the climb, and I would have completely blown up if I tried. So I slow the pace down a little bit, still pushing reasonable watts, and slowly Peter and Cyrus from the other team catch me up. and we go over the top together some 5 or 6 seconds ahead of the rest of the riders. In hindsight, I may not have pushed quite as hard here if I knew just how strong Mr. LaRock was. But hey, at least I had a pretty good go at it. Nothing much happened after the climb. Mr. LaRock was well gone by now, and the rest of us rested a bit and started to prepare for the sprint. I still thought that the other fooder riders would try to go for a long one, as they're all strong riders, so we're all on high alert here. But again, nothing actually happened, and we're now approaching 1 kilometer to go. This is when Mr. Renault puts in a serious attack, and we all have to push really hard to follow him. I do try to slowly drift back here and not to go too hard, as it's just too far to sprint from 1 kilometer out. But Mr. Renault just keeps pushing hard, and all of a sudden we only have 500 meters to go. This is where I make a bit of a mistake, I think. With just under 400 meters, I hit my aero power up and I start sprinting full gas, and sure enough, I pass almost everyone, but it's just too far to me to keep that effort going, and I have to sit down for a second around 150 meters before I kick again with 100 meters to go. But by then I've lost a bit of a momentum, and my teammate Jan pips me on the line. Second race in a row now, pipped on the line by a teammate. Bah! But fair play to Jan. I never saw him as a sprinter, but in the last couple of races he's done really well in the sprints, so chapeau. Now a quick look at the final results. So in the end, Fooder Rublejean won this one by a good margin, but still not as comprehensively as I thought ahead of the race. There was just nothing we can do about Mr. Cotin and Mr. LaRock in first and second place. Just way too strong for us. Chapeau. However, apart from those two riders, I thought we did well. Jan in particular coming third. I was also impressed by Peter, who is new on the team, but he certainly belongs as he climbed very well, I thought. Martin, who's normally our strongest rider, also did well as he's been fighting a bug for a few weeks. And finally Marcus rode strongly also, with all 8 of us, behind the first 2 that is, only separated by a few seconds after a long, hard 1 kilometer effort at the end. But again, many congratulations to the Fooder team, well deserved. We need a rematch, but please, please, leave Mr. Cotin and Mr. LaRock at home next time. Alright, a few post-race thoughts before we wrap this race vlog up. Alright, post-race thoughts. Wow, great race, I really enjoyed it. Super chilled at the start, and then the second half was full gas. So, overall a really good workout. And I must admit, the race didn't pan out the way I thought it would, apart from one thing. And that was that their Cat A+ rider, Mr. Cotin, was just too strong. We'd already agreed that if he went off solo, we would just let him go. It's no point. He would have just ridden us off our wheel. I think I could have stayed with him for a good while, but in the end, he would have just dropped me. And in hindsight, since he won by a couple of minutes, maybe that would have been a good strategy. But then I think the Fooder team would have responded. So probably it was just best to let him go. Apart from that, both teams didn't want to work at all until we got to the first climb out of the desert, when they punched it pretty hard. Got a little bit of a rest, but then Mr. LaRock punched it super hard going up the Titans Grove KOM. I need to look at the figures there, but it felt like I was doing 7 watts per kilo for a long time. And in the end, it was just too much for me. I could have kept going for a little bit longer, but then I would have absolutely blown and I wouldn't have been able to feature in the end. So I slowed down, formed a group there with Peter and another one from their team. For a while we had a bit of a lead and we pushed a bit, but in the end the group came back together, and then it came down to a sprint where I did okay, but I got my timing wrong. I went too early and used my power up, and then I had to sit down, and I lost a bit of momentum, and then I pushed in the very end, but then my teammate Jan snuck by me, so chapeau to him. He's turned from a real diesel engine to a bit of a sprinter in the last couple of races. So whatever you're eating, Jan, keep doing it, because you're getting really strong in the sprint, so chapeau. Overall, actually a pretty good result for our team. They just had some really, really strong riders all across, and especially the top two. So chapeau to them. Just too strong for us. Nothing more I can say to that. Overall, yeah, pretty good race. I did all right. Sprint wasn't that good, but I did my best in the climb. Mr. Larocque was just too strong. So, more practice. And then we have another race on Saturday in FRR. It's a one-off race. And I'm be competing in the DRA category. So if you want to watch me get absolutely smoked, tune into that video. Should be a good one, I think. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed. And if you watched this far, thank you very much. This is Sam, trying to spin to win on Zwift. And I'll see you in the next one. Have a good one. Bye-bye.